Welcome back to the Golden Hour podcast, the official content show of the Horizon League. I'm Sean Sullivan here at the Gates Center in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Such a beautiful place. What a facility they have here to train and prepare for their competitions and go to school here in Northeast Indiana. And we are really lucky to have Donovan Martin with Purdue Fort Wayne, and looking forward to a discussion in and around his work in the mental health performance space, I guess I will call it. But I'll let you introduce that part of it, your role here at Purdue Fort Wayne, and maybe provide some more specificity around your title and role here.
Oh, sure. And I appreciate you having me on. And this is a good opportunity because anytime we get a chance to talk about mental health and student athletes, to put a light on that, it's good for the athletes. Mm-hmm. A little bit of background from me. I went to Indiana State in lovely Terre Haute, Indiana. For undergrad, I was a rugby player there. Loved the sport, loved the school, great psych training for undergrad. And then I went to a little school called the Illinois School of Professional Psychology, which at that time it was one of 7 schools in the country. And I was enrolled in what's called a PsyD program, so the Doctorate of Psychology. PhD is more like your research, PsyD is the applied side, which is where my passion's always been. 3.5 years in, they told us, guess what? Your school's going to be sold to Argosy. And I did the stereotypical thing where I said, well, I got 1 more year. I'm going to go get a license, make some money. I'll finish this thing up. Then I got married and bought a practice and never needed to finish it up. So
good.
So that's a little unique qualifier there because my training's all in clinical psych. I have the master's plus some training, so I can do like psych testing, IQ, pretty much all that kind of stuff.
So you have your practice here in Fort Wayne, and then how does that relate to the work here at the university and with athletics?
Yeah, so I started out in private practice and was really fortunate that my mentor started that practice 30 years ago, and I took that over in 2009 and got to, he's still around, so we're still side by side. It's been a wonderful thing. And then my research, kind of my expertise at this point, not back then, was in the type of anxiety that high-achieving people have. Why are surgeons kind of OCD? Why are accountants the certain way they are? Why are those Purdue engineering guys the way they are, right? Why are Rose Holman guys the way they are? Or girls. So we studied this high-achieving population, and then I was doing private consulting work out of the private practice with lots of different organizations and athletes and things like that. And it was John Conchar's senior year, and Kaufman, out of the blue, gave me a call or a text, I can't remember now, and said, hey, I need you to meet this guy, and if it works out, we need you to work with him. And that was 8 years ago, I think. So it's gone pretty good, and I started with John and then kind of went into the whole team part with men's basketball, and then the school said, hey, we'd like you to be here for all athletes. And so now myself and then Jessica, who works at Dunn Associates with me, she's here also. And so we kind of share, I think we do about 6 hours a week for general students or student athletes, and then I spend a lot of time with men's basketball doing preseason training and things throughout the season.
Fantastic. And of course, you're speaking of John Conchar, one of the great players here at Purdue Fort Wayne, now in the NBA, and Coach John Kaufman, the head coach of men's basketball here with the Dons. And that's a great starting point for this conversation. We talked a little bit about this before we started hitting record. Maybe you can dive a little bit deeper into that high-performing, high-achieving person and how it relates to the work you do. What are some of the telltale signs, or maybe the acuity level of what you're seeing, and how does it either broadly be addressed by administrators athletes, coaches. And what are the concerns right now?
Sure. I think one thing that's been great about working at Purdue Fort Wayne is they're so open to the education piece. You know, they ask great questions. What should I be looking for in my student athletes? How do I get them the help they need before there's a crisis? So we talk a lot about prevention is a better model than intervention. Obviously, we need both.
Yeah.
So, you know, they've been so gracious and inviting. I've come to coaches' meetings. I've been at retreats for the department where they've given me time to talk, and they just ask great questions. And then there's the education piece, right? And so where we come from, to get into the model a little bit, is we study people that are on the higher end. To do it from a statistics standpoint, they're about 1.5 to 4 standard deviations above the norm. And so there's an assumption there that people in that population are inherently anxious. So the first thing that we always focus on is we're not problem oriented. We will help you with problems that are usually the catalyst to get you in front of us and build a relationship so we can start to work together. But what we're really going to work on is helping you understand that this anxiety will work for you. It may not be currently, but that's the ultimate goal. So we don't really try to get rid of it. We don't focus so much on here's 10 coping skills. Especially with college-age people, our mission is to really help them understand how they work. So to facilitate the most insight, self-awareness, self-regulation. But if we're doing it right, the individuals and the teams are coming up with those techniques and methods. It's not so much like, let's learn to box breathe. Although some players may feel like breathing is good for them and it's a good coping strategy or technique, whereas other players may not. So our job isn't to tell you what to do. Our job is to help you understand how you work so you can develop your own skills. So as a joke, not joke, we always tell them, if we do this right, we're trying to get fired, right? like we're trying to help you develop this skill set so you're like, I got this. I can do this.
Yeah.
You know?
So you're not needed, right?
Right. That's the goal.
The toolbox is filled.
That's right. So our model, we work from an anxiety model that was developed over the course of my education and early training, and it essentially has 3 parts. We're going to teach you how anxiety works from kind of a cognitive behavioral theory. We're going to show you how it's really the emotions that are moving around that make those thoughts go haywire, and when those thoughts and emotions aren't where they need to be, the actions are going to follow. So we help a lot on understanding, we call it your anxiety scale, right? Typical, mild, moderate, severe, somatic, panic. We're going to help you understand that you probably have a pretty high tolerance to this anxiety. So you don't pay attention to it till it's really, really cranking away pretty high up there. A lot of athletes are pretty used to butterflies in the stomach. Well, technically that's somatic anxiety, the precursor to panic. So just because you're used to it doesn't mean it's optimal. So we help them build that self-awareness so they can start paying attention to the lower levels of anxiety, because it's a much more effective model for performance to ramp up the anxiety and kind of step into the performance space, the zone, if you will, rather than be like, I'm freaking out, how do I chill out and get into the zone? So we try to really emphasize we're not going to go high and then come low. We're going to understand how we work and gradually build it up very intentionally and then lock it in place. And how do we know when things are going kind of haywire with our anxiety? Well, our focus is going to be external instead of internal. And then we're going to learn what we typically focus on and how that influences us. But essentially at the core, there's this triangle, and the bottom 2 parts of the triangle say control and avoid. And what we're helping the people understand is my personality, my identity, am I more of a controller or an avoider? A controller is like your type A, right? Not so much I want to control other people, but like just let me do what I do. I don't like change. I like to know the schedule, things like that. And an avoider is not like a person that, we're not talking fight or flight. This isn't run and hide. This is more somebody that just wants to avoid unnecessary things, drama, any tension. So if everybody's happy and everything's fine, then we can just do what we do and we can just get it done. Well, there's a whole lot of things in sport that you can't control and you can't avoid, especially things like injury, officiating,
Sure.
weather. There's a million factors there. So what we do is we help them understand themselves and understand that, hey, I'm more of a controller. And so when things are going to happen, so it doesn't really matter what happens, so we don't have to focus on our trigger, so to speak. When something happens that's going to escalate that anxiety, I'm going to go into control mode. So the more I know about myself and how I work, then I can start to recognize that and then regulate that in real time. And that's what, at the core of everything we do, that's the model that we work from. And then the amazing part, the part that I get really all fired up about, is that's like the whiteboard part, right? We're going to put that on the board. We're going to have discussions. We're going to be in a conference room or classroom. We're going to sit and talk about it. And then the fun stuff happens. Then we go do it. And so I tell you, half of my expertise is in that clinical model, and the other half is in the experiential applied side. So let's see. We have taken teams to the YMCA and done Navy SEAL qualification training mixed with hot and cold experiences and a little drown proofing in the pool. We've partnered with retired Green Berets and Navy SEALs and rented paintball park and done some intensive team training there. Men's basketball team training this year was a 4-week program. They carry the logs and the boats for the David Goggins reference there. They have to make a fire out of flint and steel. We partnered with the military again and did a 30-foot rappelling wall. But all of those things are designed to make it real, right? So in a sense, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a scenario. We're going to tax you physically, and then we're going to take away your ability to control, and we're going to take away your ability to avoid, and we're going to push the anxiety up. And your job is to win.
Yep.
And then we're going to that's a rep. And then the reps just get longer in duration. So maybe we got to do it for all, in men's basketball this year, we did what we called the long day, right? Because in men's basketball, you get days like today where we don't tip off till 9 o'clock, and if it's a travel day and all that kind of stuff. So you got to be able to be on and regulate yourself all day long. So we try to mimic what that team and those people are going to experience as best we can so that it's directly applicable to the performance setting.
Donovan, thank you for sharing all of that. So tell me if this is a appropriate comparison.
Yeah.
So when I hear you talk like that, I hear for the brain what athletic trainers and sports medicine do for the rest of the body. Yeah. Prehab, a lot of prehab.
Yeah.
Ideally, it's more prehab and less rehab.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But is that an appropriate comp for what you do?
I mean, the only thing I would add to that, it's for the brain, but it's just kind of my style. I always say it's both what you think and what you feel, right? Because in sports, there's this prevailing idea that it's thoughts and actions, but you love your sport. Pretty sure that's a feeling. So anxiety is a feeling by definition, so we're always trying to give that feeling, right? And then your brain's going to follow, but we're trying to give that anxiety impact all the time, because if you can preload it, then when it happens and it's 2 seconds left and you got to make it happen, you've already done that. You just haven't done it in that context perhaps, but you've had a lot of experiences to that.
How about a term that I've run across, whether it's in some mindfulness things or meditation practices, that helps me, and I don't know if it would fall into this category, but like this idea of noting what you're thinking and not judging it, just realizing it.
Yep.
Is that a helpful practice for folks getting ready for a game who might be where that level is raising and or the control piece?
Sure. I mean, I think when we're trying to foster that self-awareness, that's really what it is. We talk a lot. We call it like the objective third, right? The ability to note it. Okay, that's my level. Here's where I'm at. I'm somewhere in the severe range. With the real trick there that you mentioned, in the part we put even more emphasis on, is the non-judgmental piece of that. Being able just to see it for what it is, not really evaluate it or feel this sense of urgency to do something about it. So it's a pretty amazing thing to watch over the course of some experiential sessions where college-age athletes start to, it's like they can trust that it's okay to not judge.
Yeah.
And that brings you a real sense of security. And security is essentially the antidote to anxiety, right? Anxiety, insecure, secure, not very anxious. Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. We talk about all the time. If I'm starting to control or avoid, where am I at on that scale? Okay. So it's not so much why am I there or anything else. It's that note, here it is, but objective, so there's no judgment there. And then we can move forward.
All right, I appreciate that. Okay, so I don't want to get you fired, but I do want to go into the toolbox for a second.
Okay.
And I'm assuming you would say that every student athlete, patient, however you want to describe, is different, right? But is there a handful of tools or practices or habits that you kind of just generally share to improve mental health?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So that's a good question, and I always have to give my little preface before I answer that question. Is we'll talk about skills, techniques, ways to deal with things. However, we talk before. I'm pretty stubborn about that, so I dig my heels in, because if you don't know how you work, then when you're going to use those skills is going to be the wrong time or like point of entry. So for example, we talk a lot about self-talk, goal setting, visualization, and breathing, the big four. It's in every single sports psych research article, book, military uses it. I mean, you can't get away from it. But we spend a lot of time talking about, well, when do you do that? Because if you're already in somatic or panic type functioning and then you try to do those things, they're going to be ineffective. And if they're ineffective, it's going to actually spike it up more, because now you're going to worry about worrying. So it's a lot about understanding, okay, well, when do I do these? And then how do I do them that's very unique and connected to my emotional experience? So we talk about the function of like self-talk, to maintain a sense of security and make whatever seems big small. So it shrinks it and it reminds me I'm fine. But no two people should have the same self-talk, because it's got to tie back to something that's genuinely emotional for you. And so then, like with those four, we talk a lot about, well, you're really supposed to do them all at the same time. It's not like a sequence. It's kind of like a mindset or a mode you're in. So that's hard in the college years, because they're so used to like being in school, right? Like I remember the four things. Here they are: 1, 2, 3, 4. You do this first, second, third, and fourth. And it's like it's a lot more gray than that. So we try to give them a lot of examples. I like to be really visual with them. So we'll show them things like the Blue Angels doing the stick, the chair flying, and the visualization, and like, see, they're in an office. They're not like freaking out right now and like, oh, I should visualize. So we try and make it real applicable for them. And then the other four that we talk a lot about are sleep, diet, exercise, but not for your sport. That's training. This is a different kind of exercise. And then a passion, but not your sport. So in a sense, what we say is you got to have good sleep because that's going to reset your brain and emotions. And we give some techniques and thoughts on how to get rid of your screens. Not sure we're real successful at that, but we promote it. So we do the sleep stuff. Obviously, diet, super important. And then your workout, we talk about it in terms of like catharsis. So it's a way to take all that weight of the world and pressure that's coming from external, but also internal, and just kind of dump that out. So that's a different workout than your team or your sport workout. And it's really up to the athlete what that looks like. It doesn't have to be super intensive. You know, it could be a hike in the woods. Yeah. I don't know, but they need to know is the point. Right. And then your passion is a hobby. A lot of the same thoughts there is that it's a helpful way to kind of pull anxiety out. You know, if it's a bottle of water, it dumps some out, so to speak. Yeah. But you're not trying to be good at it. It's not like you're not going to invest in it. It's just something you do. It works for you. You might change it up. It'll be a revolving type of thing because your sport's your primary focus, right? So this is just your outlet, but you got to have it.
Is that in some part because you don't want to be fully identified with your sport in that case?
It helps with that identity for sure. Yeah, you got to be more than what you do.
In case that's taken away for reason A, B, or C, there's something else there to have a passion about. Right?
Bring me some joy. It'll get you through injuries way better. Yep.
That's fun to talk about because it's critical. So this is a global question, and then zooming into an athletic department.
Sure.
Okay, so if you could wave a magic wand to primary K through 12 education, what would you implement in this space
for mental health?
For mental health. If you could just wave your, like, what would we do to train young people's minds?
Yeah.
And then what you're doing here at Purdue Fort Wayne, I think it sounds to me unique. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of athletic departments who are working with experts in the space. But you talked a little bit before we started recording about trust and having the buy-in. Mm-hmm. And so maybe you could go both ways with that. And maybe I'm too global with like primary. I'm just curious your thoughts overall.
No, I mean, it's just an opinion. It's a thought. It's a good question. But in my private practice, I see a lot of usually 6th through 12th, right? And the biggest thing that we talk about is you don't have to have it figured out. You don't have to know what your career, your major is. You don't have to know if you're going to go D1, D2. Like, you don't have to know any of this. And the pressures being put on them, whether it's directly or implied, to have it figured out, it seems to do a lot of damage in terms of their anxiety, their depression, their overall functioning from a mental health standpoint. I think what we could do, you know, and this is going to be a little cliche, but we got to help them figure out purpose. Because if they care, they'll do the work. But the number one thing I hear is, I don't know why I should care, right? Well, because you don't understand math. You may not use this math directly, but you're going to do this in your life, and someday math is going to help you there, right? So, but they're not going to hear that unless people are helping them foster this passion. So we talk in clinical practice. One thing I talk to teenagers about all the time is, will you go to college to figure out what you love and what's interesting, and then you do that a lot, and then people pay you money to do it when you're done? And that's like a light bulb moment for them, because they think, I'm a junior in high school and I have to have it completely figured out. I have to know what school to go to, what major to pick, how to navigate 4 years of that. I have to get an internship. That's what they tell me, right? And this is a kid who's barely driving well,
right?
let alone navigating those things, right? So to free them up from that pressure and just to foster that, it's just really about figuring out what you're passionate about.
Yeah.
I think that would do them a world of good.
All right, so let's bring that, zoom it in to the Purdue Fort Wayne
Yeah.
athletic group, and how there's that trust and perhaps a culture being cultivated where this is critical to how they operate here.
Yeah, I think, like I said, the way we started was really powerful, right? Because we started with John, and to have him value it, because it was. I mean, at least in my mind, if after a couple of meetings with him, if he would have said this was no good, I probably wouldn't be doing this interview. So to have him support this, and then from Kaufman to then Kelly, and then all the way through the organization, it's really been great because they've all approached it with an open mind. They're really curious. They obviously care about their players immensely, so they want what's best for those players. And so to have a resource to take care of the mental and emotional side, and then I think it's a style, right? It's a good fit between the way I practice and the way the organization, coaches, and players like to interact. They like that we can talk the way we talk, and they like that we're going to get out and do stuff, even though they may not always like the stuff we do. It's really unique. They've probably never had experiences like that, or not many. And so, I think the organization's seen some value in that, and they've been really supportive, and they've seen where we can do more prevention. They've invited us to talk to the hyper class, the first year class for athletes. We always do one section of that so we can kind of get in there right when they show up, first couple months on campus, and just support the teams and the coaches as best we can. I think one thing that's made it a really good fit is we don't try to be the experts. So like when we do team training, it always starts with meet with the coach and learn about the team, right? Who are we to walk in and say we know what's best for your team? I can't even play that sport. So I can't play many sports, but so we know our job is to make them better.
Yeah.
And so we like to be behind the scenes. We like to be supportive like that, and they've run with it and made it great.
So, thank you for sharing that. So there's obviously this kind of programmatic approach.
Yeah.
But now you have what we hear a lot about is the stigma of asking for help if there's more of that needed. How do you balance maybe the athlete wants to just have this discussion over here, doesn't want it to relate to a coach or relate to maybe what's happening over here. How does a professional in your case work that?
So we give them a lot of access points, because it is hard. It really hard. That's one of the big drawbacks of some of the models, even in the pro world. If you're the sports psych for a pro team and your office is 3 offices down from the GM, I'm not sure you want to be seen walking in and out of there. Yeah. And that's just the business side of sports. Now the beautiful thing here is we don't really have that stigma that I've never come across a player or a coach at this school where that would be seen as negative. But our players, they can talk to their trainers. Lots of stuff gets discussed in the training room or with trainers. Trainers have access to our schedules. They can just plug athletes right in. They don't even have to talk to us. They can just, you can go next Tuesday at 10. You're in. Athletes, they literally have my cell phone. They can text me and say, hey, man, can I meet with you? And I think that's something that, it's something I'm really proud of, is that in my mind, we've crossed that barrier. And I don't think there's many student athletes or teams that feel like it's a negative thing to come talk with us. It's promoted really well. We've done a good job, in my opinion, we've brought in other providers. I'm not all things to all people, right? We all work together. So just like here in any athletic department, you got the training team. I kind of have my mental health team, right? So anything that comes up, we can pretty much get the right people in front of you and handle it at a high level. So, yeah.
That's good to hear, because I guess I'd ask you if there was an administrator listening, or coaches who listen to this conversation, and at their institution, they're thinking, man, I wish I had that. How do you recommend doing that with an athletic director, administration, maybe at Central University care team or something of that effect?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you would say, hey, here are a couple of quick things I think you should do?
Well, I think first you got to know the culture of the organization, right? I think sometimes, like from an outside organization like myself coming in to have a contract and build that kind of relationship, a lot of times we come in and we say, well, here's what we do, here's our model, and here's what it costs. And do you want this? It's more of like a sales model.
Yeah.
And we didn't really do that. This was more of like, well, let's build this together. And so, we've got limited hours and things like that because of budgets and things like that. And you just have to be understanding of that. You have to be able to collaborate in the real sense of the word, not just in a contractual piece of paper type of collaboration. And I think as long as we put what's best for the student athletes and the teams first, then we'll sort out the rest. And so I think it's being able to have that trust and that open dialogue with AD all the way down, coaches, and when you can be genuine in that regard, you'll find ways to make it evolve over time. This is our 8th year here. It wasn't like this 8 years ago, right? So every year we figure out ways to be more impactful and provide better support. And every year they give us help with that. Hey, we could use you here more and less over here. And so it's just this mutual way of how do we provide better service. And I don't know, we're pretty stubborn, so we just stick with it.
Yeah. Seems like it's working.
Yeah.
So the impetus for us connecting today for this recording was our commissioner at the Horizon League, Julie Rowe Lash, sharing with me, hey, I ran into Donovan Martin at Purdue Fort Wayne, and he talked a little bit about the mental health grant that the Horizon League and the league's board and council all came together to approve a grant of more than $500,000 distributed to all 11 institutions to the tune of $50,000 to each university to meet some needs that the university need in the mental health space. And you talked a little bit about how that was impactful to Julie. So I'd ask you if you could expand a little bit upon what you shared with Julie in that context, and what continued support, financially or otherwise, can mean to well-being of student athletes.
Sure. Yeah, that was I'm kind of surprised it's come all the way to this, because that was at the Notre Dame Purdue Fort Wayne exhibition game, and she was standing behind our bench, and I was like, well, I'm just going to go tell her thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So it's pretty awesome how it's come to this. But yeah, that grant was a game changer for us at this school. Because let's face it, there's the clinical side. Excuse me. There's the clinical side, and then there's the business side, right? And the business side is what it is. And so there's only so many resources out there. There's only so much capital. And in an institution like this, I'm just glad I'm not the person that has to manage all that, because that seems like a really tough job. So what that grant basically did is, we've always been able to do a lot with like men's basketball, because their budget is different than most other school teams' budgets. That's the nature of sports.
Yep.
And so when that grant came in, it kind of leveled the playing field, right? So now all teams have funding. All teams can then be independent and decide, well, what's best for my team and my players? So it allowed them to have a lot of autonomy. And then it allowed them to collaborate in a way where we could design programming specifically for every single team. So that grant allowed mental health services to every single athlete in this department was either exposed, engaged in, somehow mental health came to you. And so that's the huge piece right there, is the expectation that a 19-year-old college kid's going to go, yeah, I'm not feeling so well mentally, I should go talk to somebody. I don't have a lot of faith in that. I have immense amount of faith, though, with the right funding behind it, that if we can do some exposure, some team training, we can take that stigma away, we can give them a little exposure, they'll call. They'll say, hey, coach, I want to go talk to whoever. They'll be in the training room, and they'll say, hey, could you give me an appointment with that guy or that girl? So that grant really just pushed us to the point where we could work with every single team and every single student athlete. Almost, it felt, from my standpoint, being an independent contractor, it was like almost overnight, right? As soon as that grant hit, it was awesome to see all these teams being like, all right, yeah. There was no hesitation, or there was no like, what should we do, right? So the need was there. Yeah. And then when you put that funding behind it, and we did all kinds of amazing group out, like experiential, right? I had the Navy SEALs and Green Berets involved. We're doing outdoor stuff. These kids are eating MREs, sitting on top of waterfalls, and then all the classroom stuff too, and the discussions. So, they got this giant exposure to different approaches of therapy, different models of psychology. And so really that grant just took our ability to a whole different level and kind of spread it out throughout the whole program. So it was monumentally impactful. Without that, we would have never been able to do that.
Well, we're glad that it was implemented here to great success, and I know I speak for everybody at the league. We're grateful that the board approved that, and our commissioner's leadership with that, and all of the folks across our league that are implementing those grant dollars for the benefit of our athletes. Really cool stuff. All right, Donovan Martin, thank you for joining us on the Golden Hour podcast. Anything last? How can folks find you? Maybe it's social media, maybe it's LinkedIn. Anything that might make sense? How many books have you written? How many articles are you published in? What this is the plug zone. What can we do?
Okay, I'm too busy to write. I'm not at that point in my career yet. I'm having too much fun doing stuff, ropes courses and all that. I'm on Instagram, Martin_Donovan. There's a Donovan Martin Mental Performance Facebook page. DonovanMentalPerformance.com is under construction, so check back in about a month. And my private practice in town is called Dunn, DUNN Associates. I've consulted with teams and athletes across the whole country, actually worldwide, because I do Formula 2 and Formula 3. I work with a lot of drivers, some overseas basketball people. So I'm not hard to find. You can find me if you need me, and I'd love to connect. So I appreciate this very much. I hope it was informative, and anytime we can put a spotlight on mental health, I'm always happy to help.
Well, thanks for the work you do in support of the athletes here at Purdue Fort Wayne. We're really grateful for the support of Kelly and her leadership, the athletic director here, and all the good folks who work here. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this week's episode of the Golden Hour. You can follow us at Horizon League. We hope you make a major impact in everything you do this week. Are you hungry? Cluster Truck is Indy's go-to delivery and pickup kitchen. With always free delivery and over 100 menu items, there is something to satisfy everyone's craving. Hand-stretched pizzas, pad thai, tacos, salads, wraps, burritos, and more delivered directly to your curb. Delivering to Fountain Square, downtown Indy, Carmel, Castleton, Broad Ripple, Fishers, and more. Use code HLRadio at checkout to receive $5 off your next order of $20 or more. Order now at clustertruck.com.